Good afternoon and welcome back to Jeff and the Rabbi. Rabbi Freeman, I don't know what you have against me. I don't know what's going on, but I'm getting a little worried. You know, first we're talking about sanctity of marriage, then we talk about all these other progressive causes. Now, I mean, we're getting to the point here. I think you have something in for me here with global warming, the third rail of progressivism.
Right.
You listen, if I get this one wrong, there could be rehabilitation camps, there could be problems like this. I know you're protected by that national organization of rabbis unions or whatever it is you guys got there. Me, I got to live in this world here. This isn't right. Global warming is what we're going to talk about today. So I figured, first, I should just give a real quick backstory on what global warming is.
Well, first of all, could we adjust the thermostat in here? I'd like to get a little climate change.
Oh, that was a
Could
good
we get
one.
some climate change in here?
That's pretty much what climate change is, I think, here. Problem is, I'm going to give I know everybody thinks they know what global warming is, but I think maybe you don't. The quick backstory on global warming is it's a theory, and actually not a bad theory. It's based on scientific fact that if man releases enough carbon into the atmosphere, now real quickly what carbon is, because I know most people hear carbon, they think it is dirty, cold, this horrible stuff, and that's what they want you to think, because that's why they say carbon instead of the full word, which is carbon dioxide. Because if you mention carbon dioxide, people realize that's what we breathe out, and that's what trees breathe in to create oxygen.
Right.
So it doesn't sound as harmful when you say carbon dioxide. But their worry is if you get enough carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, it'll put this little barrier there. So when the heat, which rises from the Earth, rises, it gets trapped in and keeps the heat on the Earth so that we could have global warming. It's a legitimate argument. Everything makes sense about it. Problem is, that it doesn't really, the data doesn't actually justify it. Here's the situation, and I got some real stats here because you know I'm a stats kind of guy. Since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, which was somewhere around the late 1800s, we have actually, according to measurements, the global temperatures have gone up about approximately 7.7 degrees, which, you know, it could be significant if you think about that. If that kept going, you would get pretty hot here at one point. The problem is, though, with the argument is, number one, we don't know how they measured back in the late 1800s. And number two, the most important part, when you look at the statistics a little closer, you realize that 88% of that rise in temperature happened before the year of 1940. Now, before the year of 1940, we didn't have millions of cars driving around. We didn't have airplanes flying around. We didn't have all this industrialization that would cause the man-made global warming that Al Gore talks about in his movie. So if 88% of it happened before, that means after 1940, it's only gone up about half a degree. To make it even worse, for the past 18 years, and we now find out if you look at the stats, the global temperatures have definitely not risen, and if anything, have slightly decreased in the last 12 to 18 years. So the problem with global warming, and this is what they had the problem, is the numbers aren't adding up. But progressives are pretty smart people. Here's what they do. Those numbers combined with the fact that we now have a 24-hour news cycle where we can show that it's pretty cold in Minnesota today and it's pretty cold in Iowa. They said global warming no longer exists. Now, because of that same science, we now have climate change. Brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. It might be the stupidest argument ever made by mankind, but made by progressives, it's brilliant. When you control the media, the entertainment, the movies, then this argument works. It now says, when you turn on CNN and you see that it was cold, we had, I think this last winter might have been the coldest winter on record for the last 30, 40 years, climate change. It's better than that. It even gets better, though.
So wait a second. A great statistician.
Yes.
So why, let's just cut to the chase. Why are they doing this?
Oh, wait a minute. I could do a couple more. It gets even better. I'm a chase cutter, but I'm a slow chase cutter. Number one, tornadoes, climate change. Hurricanes, climate change. Fires, earthquakes, everything is climate change. And I know smart people said, look at all the tornadoes we had last year. There must be climate change. Now, of course, last year happened to be the lowest tornado recordings on record for the past 30 years. But on CNN, there's a tornado every day. Here's what the problem is. It's all, for them, it's about two things. Redistribution of wealth, which is an important thing. You know, you take it from the haves and give it to the have-nots. You know, Al Gore might be our first billionaire, global warming, climate change billionaire. And it's also progressivism, because here's my theory. Now, my theory isn't settled like I know the president says. Global warming, climate change, it's settled. If you disagree with the argument, you are a flat earth society guy. You are an ignoramus, an idiot, and you probably don't even deserve to be living.
So you're subject to theory change.
I'm going to theory change right now. My theory is this. If you went out today and you took 1,000 people and you polled first question, do you believe that climate change has a major effect on your life? You then took the same 1,000 people and say, do you believe that God has a major effect in your life? I would bet you that the numbers of the people that don't believe that God has a major effect in their life and the people that do believe that climate change have an effect on their life, those numbers will be right around the same. Progressives, that's how it works with progressivism. We don't, these God-gunning country people.
I'm seeing an opening here for me to say something. Yeah,
so now that I threw in God, and now that we're almost done with the show.
He did the magic word.
And we're done with the show. Let's throw to Rabbi Freeman. What do you think about that theory?
Well, actually, it is very interesting. I've been thinking about this from a biblical perspective. You know, the God people like to go back to the Bible quite a bit.
They cling to it.
Yes. So, you know, first of all, just to give you a little bit of Bible, get our Bible bearings, and then even to say, like, we'll step beyond the Bible, but just to get a little bit of Bible bearings on where we're at. We all know the story of Noah. It's a popular movie now, so it must have had, must be something to it because it's a popular movie. Yeah. Haven't seen the movie, but anyway, the problem with the movie.
I heard the woman playing Noah is excellent.
Yeah, the problem with the movie is that in the book, there's really no dialogue. You know, as a matter of fact, Noah in the book, the Bible, Noah doesn't really have any speaking parts. See, God talks to Noah like a few times, and he tells Noah, like, go build an ark. Noah goes and builds an ark, and he says, get into the ark, and, some stuff like that. Then Noah, like, sends out the bird at the end to get out of the ark, and Noah comes out of the ark. But Noah doesn't have any speaking parts. No. And even God only has a few speaking parts. It makes it really difficult to write a good movie.
It's kind of boring.
So, yeah, right. Right. Yeah. So you had to create a lot of, like, some tension and some angst, and I'm guessing there's a love story in there too, and all that stuff.
And two cows, but it's
So anyway, the deal with Noah is Noah comes out of the ark. It's all over. God's really upset with the world. He brings a flood, floods out the whole world. Everyone's destroyed. Everything's destroyed. The buildings, the animals, the plants, everything's all gone except for Noah and his little group on the band of castaways on the boat.
Right.
They get off the boat, and God says to Noah, I'm not going to do this again. That's it. I'm not going to do this again. This is the one time I'm really like pulling the plug and starting over. Because you can't just, like, every time you're upset, just, turn the whole thing off and start over. I'm not doing it again. From now on, and it's interesting what God says. He says, hot and cold, summer and winter will not cease. Oh, hot and cold, summer, winter, planting and harvest will not cease.
Wow.
That's what God says. He doesn't say, like, I'm not going to flood out the world again, or I'm not going to bring catastrophe. Wow. He says specifically, hot and cold, summer and winter, planting and harvesting. What that means is that God says, basically, the world is going to continue on as it is. There are going to be cycles. There's every year, there's going to be hot, and there's going to be cold. There's going to be a summer, there's going to be a winter, there's going to be planting, there's going to be harvesting. Now, of course, it might get a little hotter this time, a little colder that time or something, but the basic premise, the structure of there being seasons and there being planting and harvesting and all, like, it's not going to come about that, like, it's going to get so hot and dry that we won't be able to plant anything. Or we're going to, like, freeze out and we won't be able to, everyone's going to starve to death because the world's going to be covered with ice or whatever it is. That's not going to happen. The seasons are going to come and go. It's going to stay steady. Now, even if that means, if God says that, from a Bible believer's perspective, even if we dumped every carbon in the world possible into the environment,
right,
it's not going to stop.
Wow.
Because God said so. Which means it'll figure out something. Something will happen, and there will be, because God can always do a game changer. He always does game changers all along. This is the old horse manure problem. Early 20th century, everyone was wondering what's going to happen. Our cities are being buried under mounds and mounds of horse manure. What are we going to do about it? And then someone, not because he was really worried about horse manure, but because he wanted to get from here to there faster, invented the automobile. Now the problem is not horse manure, now the problem is carbon. But I mean, it is going to be another problem, and then after that there'll be another problem, and then after that there'll be another problem. Then, interestingly enough, next big post Noah and the Ark story. Next big one. All you Bible fans following along, you turn ahead a few pages, and the next thing you run into is...
Big old tower.
Tower of Babel.
Yep.
Now, what was that all about? And interestingly enough, how that one follows after the other.
Oh, and I think I know where you might be going here.
Tower of Babel. See, you got a bunch of people there that wanted to take control of the situation to make sure, because you know what they came up with this idea. At least this is according to the way our sages tell us in the oral law. They thought that, you know what? They weren't so sure about God not trying this stuff again. So they were going to try to outmaneuver God and build a tower, and they were going to go try to neutralize God's hand and all these things so that they could keep it all under control and keep it the way they wanted it, because they didn't want God to be able to pull one of these maneuvers on them, like flood them out or something. And of course, that doesn't end well. So we got these two stories back to back. Number one, God says, listen, understand quite well that if I ever want to shut it down, at any moment, I have the ability to shut it down. I'm not going to shut it down. You know why? Because I said so. That's why it's not going to shut down, because I have decided it's not going to shut down. Should you try to take control of it at any other time and run it your way, remember, I'm in control. You can't run it your way. It's going to be run the way I want to run it.
Wow.
Now, this raises a host of questions, but one of the fundamental issues that I see philosophically, theologically, which is the way I look at it, I'm always looking for that.
You're always in that
theologically. I'm always in there. Yeah, right. I'm
one-trick pony here.
That's right. Right. It's always going to get back to that. Interesting. It gets back to that three-letter word, and I even put a dash in one of the three. Right. It's a three-letter word. I can't even get all three of them in there. Right. So anyway, the idea is that do we control this world, or do we, humanity, not control this world? Now, interestingly enough, there are some people, like the Bible people say that Adam was put in the garden to work it and to guard it. He's got a responsibility to guard it. He's got to treat it properly. He can't abuse it. He can't overrun it. He can't, you can't have Noah you can't have Adam going into the garden and just start cutting everything down. He's not allowed to do that. Right? However, Noah, everyone after, they're rest assured that God is really in control. If God put us here and He wants us here, we cannot destroy ourselves. We can't destroy the planet. We cannot remove mankind from the planet. If God wants us to be here, He put us here for a reason. We can't destroy ourselves. Can't destroy the planet, can't destroy ourselves. It's God's planet. There are other people, however, that are constantly in fear that they're not in control. And they're constantly trying to take control. And they spend all their time worrying about whether it's going to be climate change. Before that, it was population growth, which, by the way, the world is doubled or tripled in size since we were first worried about population growth.
Right.
And,
But that argument's not cool anymore.
Right. And starvation has not hit the planet. No. Matter of fact, we all know that the only place that anyone is starving on planet Earth now are places where people are politically preventing other people from eating.
Correct.
But, everyone's got plenty of food. And as a matter of fact, the United States has got a problem with obesity. So no one's worrying about anyone starving to death anymore, and it's not going to be the manure and the horses and whatever is going to be the particular fear. Those things aren't going to happen. So there are people, though, however, if you don't believe that there is a higher authority, then you believe it's in our hands, and we are totally in control. And if we are totally in control, it's amazing. You know what you do all the time? You worry about the fact that it's all going to be destroyed. Because we're in control, are destroying it. And that's all you got to look at. And you look around at everyone else and you see everyone is wrecking the place up. And you're constantly worried about that. And therefore, you're paralyzed. It's almost like you have a society that spends all of its time worrying about what could be.
But isn't the conundrum here, the odd part of this situation, is the people that worry and worry and worry the most are the exact same people who don't take the easiest steps that you'd have to do. Just pray to God and look to God and get it fixed. Is there, what is this a coincidence? Why are the, I'll call them progressive type people who worry about overpopulation, who worry about the climate, they're the exact same people who do not look to God, who God, I mean, you just told, he said right there, we're not going to do this anymore.
Right.
Is that a coincidence, or is that the way it just works? Or,
so it's interesting that they'll point to the fact, what do you mean? Can you just go and pollute the world? So it's very interesting when it comes like pollution. You know, the famous, the Cuyahoga River in Cleveland, you know, caught on fire.
Right, yes.
Right, but I was there not so long ago. It's been all cleaned up. Now, you know what happens? When people create those type of problems, then people fix up those type of problems. Because you realize if you have your house and you make garbage and you just dump it on the front yard, you know, after a while you will realize, like, ugh, I got a horrible front yard here. So maybe I'm going to come up with something else. And if we get another problem somewhere else, then you should haul the garbage off to somewhere else. If it's going to be a problem there, we'll fix it.
Yeah, because I want to make it very clear. I'm not for pollution. I mean, I don't want the world being polluted either. But I think the pollution and climate change and all these things are two totally different arguments now.
Now, there's two questions when it comes to climate change. Technically, you know, let's say there is climate change, okay? So is that good or bad? First of all, I haven't really seen an argument that it's absolutely bad. Like I've mentioned to you before, you know, at the time that the ice age started receding, that was climate change. Turned out pretty good. I mean, I grew up in Minnesota. The whole thing used to be underneath the ice. Now, you know, it's a pretty fertile place and everyone's eating food from there. So, you know, I don't know. Is it bad? Okay, let's say, you know, with the seas are going to raise by 1 foot. That is very bad for all those of you that own beach houses. That is going to be a problem.
But for Iowa, that's brand new beachfront property. I mean, they can't complain.
If you're in Iowa.
Beachfront.
Yeah, next time you go to the beach, you might think about it, you know. But, so first of all, is it good or is it bad? And second of all, what I really do believe is that any of these problems, as they seem to reach a head, there are always these game changers that have come along consistently throughout history where new technology and new understandings change the problem and really obviate the problem. Now, oftentimes they create new problems. That's okay. Then we'll go through the whole thing. We'll deal with the new problem. Right. You know, like who knows? I mean, let's say they're going to figure out some way to really make good, effective solar energy. You know, it's really, really usable and all that type of stuff. So then all this carbon stuff is going to be gone. I guarantee you there will be a new problem created by solar panels all over the place. And you know, after 50 years of that, we're all going to be worried about, like, what do we do with the solar panels? And some guy's going to suggest, I've got this great idea. Instead of solar panels, like, you know, you can get energy out of coal.
Wow.
Let's do that.
Exactly. You're right. He'll be the hero.
Right. So the people who are worried all the time, they're actually, if you don't believe that you're living in a world that's guided by a benevolent hand, then you live in a terrifying world, and you have to worry about everything all the time. You have to worry about the polar bear, and you have to worry about this climate. And if the climate changes, you have to be terrified. If you live in a world that's guided by a benevolent hand, okay, so the climate's changing. Maybe it's supposed to change. Who knows? I don't know. What if they find out that it's because of flares on the sun? Okay, well then I would have to say, from my perspective, God made the thing flare.
We better hope God's there, because not much we can do about that.
Right, you know, this is the way it's going to be. Now it's going to change. We'll adapt to it.
So what you're saying is, so probably somewhere around when the rain started, and in those 40 days out there, when the rain got about up to here, there's still some of these guys are running around thinking, oh, yeah, we make sure there's not too much cows over here, make sure we're not lighting fires over here. And all they had to do was pray.
They're bailing.
They're bailing the fire. But all they had to do is maybe pray a couple of minutes, and they would have been all right. But instead, they're running around trying to put out the fires and trying to put out this. And I think really what we mostly have to worry about is our personal conduct. Our personal conduct. Whoa, you're treading here.
Right.
You're treading
really more towards each other, from a religious perspective, the terror and the pressing need And the crisis that has to be dealt with is the crisis of people dealing properly with each other.
Well, that's a lot. You're saying we don't need government, we don't need Al Gore, we don't need all these things. We can just do it ourselves?
If we would be dealing better with each other, we are relatively certain that the world that God gave us, He will continue to manage. Now, if you don't believe that God gave you that world, and if you think that you just showed up here because, the amoeba developed in multiple cells, and after a while you were breathing and you came up on land, and before you know it, it was Hollywood, But if you believe that, then, you got to take care of this whole thing because you could actually go extinct. Although, the question I would wonder is, according to that, so let's say we would go extinct. How bad would that be? So let's say we started off as cells, we developed into amoeba, and after a while, Shakespeare, and then after a while, we developed out of existence. Okay.
Well, who cares, I guess. There's no reason for us to be here anyway.
So it goes. That's the way it is. Maybe me. I don't want to develop out of existence, but 30 generations from now, I feel sorry for them, but, maybe they won't feel sorry for them. Maybe they'll be happy. They'll be like the last generation around. They get to say goodbye,
That's true. Well, then my question is, obviously, I understand. I understand when we look to God, but is God looking to us? Not that this is a theory of the progressives, but what if their theory is, here's my real global warming theory. There is God. Mm-hmm. God wants us to make sure that this is what God's trying to get us to do. He's trying to get us to get rid of the cars. He's trying to get rid of all those cows that have the gas problems out there. They're causing issues.
Right.
That's what God wants. And aren't we, with free will, we're supposed to go out there and we're partners with God? Is that what we're supposed to hear? I'm not saying that that's what they're saying, because they're not.
It's like, ask the people in Pompeii. When God wants you out of there, you're out of there.
That's a good point.
Right? You're there one day.
That's going to be a new movie, too, I heard, by the way.
Yeah, Pompeii?
Yeah.
You're there one day, you're gone the next. If He wants it that way, He can just do it. In the meantime, He gave us our instructions. And our instructions are to look at the way we conduct ourselves vis-a-vis each other, to conduct ourselves in a upright, moral fashion. And if we were to do all those things, I think a lot of these problems would automatically care for themselves. I think that a lot of our profligate consumption and all the imbalance that's in the world, a lot of it has to do with just plain old immoral, rapacious behavior, where we just want to consume and consume and consume more, but for what purpose? If we had a purpose and a real function of doing something good, then we would be building up the world at the same time as we would be consuming, and the world would be a better place. It would be taking care of itself. God says we're supposed to work it and to guard it. Now, when we run into the problem that we're not working it or guarding it, we're just feasting on it, that could be a problem. And maybe that's what we have to be looking at.
So if you go to the Sodom and Gomorrah and you do whatever, maybe the global warming that ended up there pretty quick was probably because maybe they weren't doing that.
Yeah, and, God certainly changed their climate.
Yeah, pretty quick.
Yeah.
Pretty quick.
Yeah, so in other words, what I would say, if I'm going to sum it up, that God's always around. He can do the game changers. What we, I believe, need to focus on is our moral conduct vis-a-vis each other. We don't have to worry that the world is going to disappear. It's not going to disappear, and mankind is not going to disappear. If we are really hurting each other, then those are the things that we have to take care of. And we'll leave the world to God who gave it. If you don't believe that God gave you this world, then you got a tall order there. You got to get out there and you got to try to save it for some reason. I'm not sure why you want to save it, but I guess you got to save it. What else you got? I guess. I don't even understand why you'd want to save it. It's just so interesting. The people that believe it's a gift, they're really the ones that have the most invested in saving it.
Right.
If you believe we just evolved here, why are you trying to save it?
Good point.
Maybe let's just let it evolve. It's a natural course. Mankind evolves until it evolves out of existence. Maybe.
Well, which is a good point. But just real quickly, because we have a little bit of time left, to take the other side of the argument, though. So what you're saying then is, okay, well, it's really, we don't really have to do anything. We can, if it's going to happen anyway, if God's made this plan, doesn't that kind of, their argument, all you people are just sitting back, you're doing nothing, it's up to God, then I shouldn't have to do anything. I don't have to worry about what I eat. I don't have to worry what I drink. I don't have to worry about anything. I don't have to worry about taking the kid to the hospital. This is the extreme. I don't have to worry about any of this stuff.
Right.
God's got the plan.
God's got to do it, right.
God's got, where does it say that we are supposed to do that? And if it does say that, maybe we should be worrying about global warming.
So the truth is, I really believe that there is room to worry about climate change or whatever it is. However, to ultimately believe it's not going to get out of hand to the point that it's going to destroy the world. Once we understand that, reframe the problem. There is a problem. Let's say it has been proven that the carbon, our consumption of carbon or expelling of carbon is changing the climate. So then we have to ask ourselves two questions. First of all, so is that bad? Can we deal with that or not?
Right.
Okay? And if so, fine. What do we want to do about it? But rest assured, it's not in our hands. We're not going to bring about the end of the world. This is a new situation, and we have to decide what to do. And I would say that just like any other problem we've dealt with, we'll continue to deal with it. But as far as the world going down, it's not going down.
Not going down.
Not going down.
So we have
Calm
Rabbi
down.
Freeman's insurance right now.
Right.
Listen, if it does,
Calm down.
no one's going to care anyway. If we look at
Right. I really get a kick out of the people that keep saying that, like, we may have reached the point of no return. Well, if we have, then for sure there's no sense spending any time on it, you know?
Not at all.
I mean, the hole is so big it can never, even if we would do it, it would never be repaired. You know, that's not too smart to me if you're trying to campaign to get people to change by telling them, it's too late anyway.
Well, then, just one last question. Then, how do you? I mean, you have explained, but the people that say settled argument, I don't even want to hear your side of the matter. Is you have no side? You have. Are they really saying, listen, the God side of this thing is just not real? I don't want to hear from you people clinging to your God and your gun and your Bible. Is that really what they're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they say, come on, we got facts.
You guys got this fiction.
And you're telling me some promise. I don't believe in your Bible. This is a book that was made up by some people, and I don't believe in it, which, fine, I understand.
I wish they would just say that sometimes.
I understand that would be okay, right? Then the question really has to be asked, okay, let's say there is climate change. So now what? Now what? Okay, what's going to be? It's not the first time the climate has changed. According to them, there's been ice ages and all kinds of stuff. I mean, go talk to the dinosaurs. Something happened. They all died out for some reason. I don't know, something happened. Yeah. I see these pictures, like, artist rendition of what, some of these places that, some places were underwater. Right. They find, like, places in the Midwest. It was once an ocean. And things change.
Things change. Actually, I think that's the real answer to things. Things change. And what are you going to do about it? Very interesting. Well, I think this is a great topic. Now, couple things here. Be real careful who you send this to, because listen, I don't have time to go to the rehabilitation camps.
Right.
This just gets me a little nervous. This is like 3 weeks in a row that we've done topics that could really get me in a lot of trouble here. So
I don't think that we have to worry about it. People who reject the premise probably turned it off.
You think they
like
have?
Within seconds, as soon as they heard like what I was saying, it's like, yeah, I know, I've heard that.
So the bottom line, the best saving thing we have at Jeff and the Rabbi is no one watches the whole thing, so we'll be okay. That in mind,
at least we're keeping ourselves happy.
Right. That in mind, we'll probably be back next week. If we are, we'll have a great and wonderful, if not scary, topic to talk about next week at Jeff and the Rabbi.